So we're going to make a little akdama to the learning of Ayin Beis. We know that the Rebbe spoke a sicha in Tafshin Lamed Zayin that the Hemshech of Ayin Beis is considered to be niflois, even be'erech to the niflois of Samach Vov. There's something very special about Ayin Beis. We also know the Rebbe was very hesitant about printing the sefer. What is one of the things in Das Tachten that we can understand that's so special about this Hemshech? So, one of the explanations could be as follows. There is a famous sicha from the Rebbe Rashab where he says that the Maamorim of the Alter Rebbe before Peterburg, meaning before Yutes Kislev, haben verbrennt the Welt. They burnt the world. What does that mean? They were so strong, the Maamorim, that when a person heard a Maamar from the Alter Rebbe, he couldn't remain the same thing as he was before. It had an immediate effect. It was a Gilui Oyer, and it had its effect. What changed afterwards? When it came to Yutes Kislev, there was a big change that the Oyer Achsidis was nislabish into Seichel, into Haskalah. And the teva of Seichel is that it's mailim on the Oyer. It becomes dimmed. The Oyer becomes dimmer, and you see the Seichel, and you have to work out, you have to remember that we're talking about an Oyer Laki. But Bechitzenis, it's a Haskalah, it's an Ayin of Seichel. So that started, and we say that Dafka, when it came down to Seichel, started to the Ikke Inyan of Afatz HaMayonis. When we say that it came down into Seichel, we have to bavolim that we're not talking about that it became an Inyan Sichli. It's not a philosophy. Chassidus Chabad is not a philosophy, although it's sometimes called like that. This is not philosophy, this is not Chakira. Chakira is Seichel. The Lashon of the Rebbe in one of the Sichas is Mehotens gegeben in Moer Shabbatayre in Oisius von Seichel Anushi. This is Moer Shabbatayre, this is Gilul Lakus. It's just packaged into Oisius of Seichel. Whereas Chakira is Seichel. They're trying to understand things up there, but it's Seichel. This is not Seichel. This is Oyer Leki, which is Mislabish and Seichel. One of the things that the Rebbe Rashab mentions is that we see that Tanya was written, although it was written earlier, it was written in the signon of after Peterburg. Where do you see that? So he says you see it from the way everything it has, he uses the Lashon Bavoranish. Everything is Masuda, everything has its place, and it's a build-up. There's a whole building going on, and if he says something he'll refer to earlier, it's very well built. It's a Maseda Masuda. This is one of the hallmarks of Sefer Tanya. You can see it's very, very clearly set up, whereas beforehand could be a Vort, a Gilui, an Aleph. Was is an Aleph? A Pintler von Neuben, a Pintler von unten. It's a Himmeldike thing. There's no explanation over there. As it comes out that within the Alter Rebbe, the difference between before Peterburg and after Peterburg is similar to Teres Achsidus HaKlolis and Teres Achsidus Chabad. Within the Alter Rebbe Gufa, there's beforehand and afterwards. Based on that, we can now understand one of the Chidushim of Ayin Beis. When we say that the Alter Rebbe was Malbish Oyer Achsidus also into Seichel, is that just a difference in presentation? The way he said it, and that's it? Or is there a difference in the hamshacha of Gilul Lakus into the world? We're saying that he was mamshech, the oil of Teres Achsidus, into a pnimius, into Seichel. There was a changed kaviyachol in the oil in the hamshacha itself. So it's similar, we could say, to Matan Torah. The vort of Hilul Parasha, that when a Rebbe says a Maamar, it's Matan Torah. How do you view that? So it's Matan Torah. What do you mean to say by that? So there's the explanation that we say that Matan Torah was a big gilui. Matan Torah means that it's given to our seichel, that we can do with it what we want. We can not what we want, but we have to paskin according to seichel agashmi. And that's what Reb Hillel meant when he said that vort. He had a pshat in the Maamar, and even though the Tzemach said that he meant something else, Reb Hillel still said that this is also legitimate to say this other biur, because once the Rebbe said the Maamar, it becomes nachlas haklal. We can work it out for ourselves. How we are. Of course, there wasn't looked upon by Chassidim as so positively, but at the time. But the Rebbe did repeat this word. When the Rebbe says Maamar, it's Matan Torah. What happened by Matan Torah? By Matan Torah, there was hamshachas HaTorah into the world, and it became a Torah which is shaykhs to the world. Beforehand it was higher than the world, and then it became into the world. So there was a change kaviyachal in Torah. Like it says in Kisva Arizal, when we say benching, Val Teiroscha Shalim Adetanu, Teiroscha is Teiros HaAtzilus, Shalim Adetanu Ba'ilam Habriya. So we only have the Torah the way it came down to Bria, and that's why the Torah begins with a base, because it's already not Aleph. Mat Torah itself could have been the Aleph, Anoichi, but the way it came down, it's already a low level of Torah. So Al Koponim, that comes out that when the Alter Rebbe was Malbish in Sech, he was actually being Mamshech more Behislabshus in the world. Now if we take that further, each Rebbe was Moisif in this Hamshacha, and now we get to the Rebbe Rashab, we have a tremendous Hisrachvus in Teres Achsidus, but what's the Pele is, when it came to Ayin Beis, it was even much more Behislabshus. The Lashon of the Fidik Rebbe in Kuti Diburim is, Kol ho'inyonim hachi amukim shebachsidus misba'arim b'harchova k'moi dvorim regilim muchashim. Regilim muchashim, like regular muchashdika things. What does it mean, muchash? Muchash you say on something that you see clearly, like a gashmistika thing. You see the table, but muchash, not just you understand that there's a table there. You see it there, it's muchash. Is the Ayin Beis brought down the inyonim of the Pnimis HaTorah in an oifen that it's b'muchash. It's as if you see it. Kamuvim we don't see it. There's nobody seen anything besides Gashmias. But in Havana, it's ki'ilu raya. Just like a doctor can give a mevinus in Keichas HaNefesh, in the Mahalach HaNefesh. If there's a psychologist, he can tell you that the Nefesh works like this. He's ever seen a Nefesh, he has a picture. Even with all the technology, there's no pictures of Nefashas. But he has a Havana, how Nefashas work. It's called ki'ilu raya. It's ki'ilu, he sees that this is how it is. It's also how you deal in these inyonim is ki'ilu raya, and in the ki'ilu raya is an Ayin Beis, it became mamish ba'ifun muchashi. Now that we have this point, that everything is in an oifen of islabshus and seichel, that gives us to understand even better what the Rebbe Rashab said, that Tanya was written in a very mesudidika way, and everything is a bavoranish, everything has its place, very mesudidika way. What does that tell us? That since it's an hogus sichlis, therefore the bottom line what's negir to us is, it has to make sense. There's many things in Chassidus which we don't understand, obviously, because they're yonim which are l'maylam na'seichel. But even these yonim which are l'maylam na'seichel have to make sense as much as is possible. By way of example, yesh mi'ayin. Can anybody understand yesh mi'ayin? It baffles the mind. How do you get from ayin to yesh? It wasn't there, now it's there. How does that work? We only understand in yesh. How do you get from ayin to yesh? Nevertheless, you learn in Chassidus, whole biurim, how the ayin has to be mislabish in the yesh. And it has to be not the ayin which is l'mayla mishaychas. It has to be an ayin which is a ha'ora, which is shaychas to this nivra. And it has to be through the oisius, a rakia. And then it can be mislabish in the rakia, and then the rakia can come into being. So even though the etzem ho'inyan of how you get from ayin to yesh we don't understand, but we still have certain klolei ha'seichel which work for yesh mi'ayin. If there wouldn't be any klolei ha'seichel, then there would be no point in learning any Maamar, because every Maamar you'd ask, well, how does this work? The answer is, maybe he's a kovyachal, he can do what he wants. That's not how it works. We don't say kovyachal. We explain how the system works. Why this is a Seder Shtalshlus is to explain how the Eibishter is mashpia into the world in a Seder Masuda. So this Nakuda of Islabshus Eireliki into the world leads us straight into Perek Beis of the Hemshech. Because the first thing, the whole first Maamar, the whole Arichas is about Hislabshus. And again, if it's Hislabshus in Seichel, then it has to make sense. So I'll just give an example on Perek Beis of something which you probably ran through it quickly, but be worth just a klotz kasha. In Perek Beis is where the Rebbe Nishra starts talking about Keichas Pnimiyim. He says the Ratzon that we spoke about in Perek Aleph is Makif. When we get to the Keichas which are Mislabish, they're called Keichas Pnimiyim, and he says that there's a musig called Hislabshus HaKeichas Zeh Bazeh. How does he get to that point? First of all, he says that the Keich, when it's Mislabish in the Guf, has to find the Keli which is made for this Keich. You can't have the Keich HaShmir in your foot. You can't have the koyach ha'hilach in your ear. Everything has its place and has its keli. Then he asks the question, but we see there is seichel also in other koyachas. For example, you have the koyach ha'seichel in the feet. Because even the feet, you can have koyach ha'rikud, dancing in a certain chokhmah, and the chokhmah ha'rikud, whatever that would look like. We have the mice of the Shpola Zayda, didn't he learn how to dance from the Leonovi, right? So there is a chokhmah to rikud. So there is a chokhmah that's gone down. There's a chokhmah in the hand. How to be mitzay, koyach hatziyah, an artist, knows how to use his hands. So there is a slapshus of chokhmah in the hand. So what did you say that each koyach has only a certain keli? What's the answer, he says? You know what I'm talking about? Right. It's not that the koyach ha-seichel is mislabish in the foot or in the hand. It's mislabish in the koyach that's in the hand. Now how comes the koyach is able to receive it? The pashtus, you're going to have to say the reason why the koyach can receive another koyach is because they're both koyachs of the same nefesh. This is a koyach ruchni. This is a koyach ruchni. So the koyach ha-seichel can be mislabish in the koyach hayad, the koyach hatnusha b'yad, and the koyach hatnusha b'yad is in the yad because the yad is made for it. And therefore, you have the seichel also in the yad through the koyach hayad. What's that? I can't hear.
Because they're all ruchnis, that's why they're...
That's what it would seem, yeah. Because they're ruchnis. It's two koyachas of the same nefesh. They're both koyachas ruchnim. So the koyach ha-seichel is mislabish and the koyach hatnusha b'yad, and the koyach hatnusha b'yad is in the hand. The koyach hatnusha b'yad can be in the hand because there's a keli for it. But the seichel cannot go into the hand. There's no moyach in the hand. So it's mislabish in the koyach that's in the hand. So it's koyach inside hand. But then he says, well, which part of the seichel is mislabish? Only ha'oras ha'seichel. Only ha'oras ha'seichel. So I have a klotz kasha. If we have arranged things in a way that the seichel can be mislabish in the hand, because it's not actually going into the hand, it's going into the koyach ruchni that's in the hand. So why only ha'oras ha'seichel? Why not the whole seichel? It's a klotz kasha, I know. I'm just asking I'm trying to be ma'ira, a bit of thought. Why can't you say that the whole koyach ha-seichel can be inside the other koyach that's inside the hand?
It's a different koyach.
They manage to be mislabish, right? They can merge together because they're both koyachas ruchnim. So I have this koyach is mislabish in this koyach. He can't go inside the hand, but he can go inside the koyach. So he says, no, but it's only ha'oras ha-koyach. Ha'oras ha-seichel. Why not the whole koyach ha-seichel?
It's the only part that's shaykh.
In other words, what's the vod? Just like the yad has to be a keli to the koyach hatnush b'yad, and it's not a keli to the koyach hashmiya, is the koyach ruchni also has to be a keli to the koyach ha-seichel. Which part of seichel has any shaykhs to the koyach hayad? Only that section of seichel which is the seichel hamaisa. The seichel, which is of how to listen to something, listen to music, for example, that koyach ha-seichel is a different koyach. Has nothing to do with hands. The koyach ha-tnuah, the seichel ha-tnuah, the seichel of tziyur, is a chelik of seichel which is shaychus to tziyur. That can be mislabish in the koyach ha-tziyur shebiyad. So in other words, his slabshus, what does his slabshus mean? That there's a shaychus pnimius between the koyach, between the oir and the kli, as opposed to what? Well, we could have a slabshus if you have a keli, and let's say you have mashke inside a cup. Is there any, would you call that his slabshus? The mashke is mislabish inside the cup. How are you drinking your mashke? With a cup. So it was mislabish there. That's not called islabshus. That's a technical islabshus. You could put a mashke in the cup, you could put a shoe inside the cup. It would also stand still inside the cup. The cup has nothing to do with the mashke. Hislabshus means that there's a kesher pnimi. There's a kesher pnimi between the two. So the seichel, which is going to be mislabish in the koyach hatnu shebiyad, has to be a seichel which has a shaychus pnimi to the koyach hatnu. Which part of seichel has a shaychus pnimi to the koyach hatnu? Only that part of seichel which talks about tnuah. He will be mislabish in that koyach hatnu. It's a simple. It's a klotz.
Is it because he is nochus or because he is shaychus?
Only because he's shaychus. Only because it's shaykhs.
So it can be in higher seichel if I want to use a higher seichel for some meridic tzio, so it can be also...
It's also only the koyach hamayis. You could not put, for example, the seichel of a nigun, the chochmas hanegina, into the koyach hantnu. What picture are you going to make? Unless you have maybe you could have the tzia of the music, but if there is such a thing, you can make a picture based on the music. The koyach has to have a shaychus pnimis with the other koyach that is being mislabishing. So the koyach in the feet also, the feet can dance. There's a chokhmah to dancing. So it's only that part of seichel which is shaychus to the dancing. So there has to be that. So islapshus means there's a shaychus pnimis.
That means it's a different answer than what the Rishab says.
Say again.
It's a different answer than what the Rishab says. I'm saying the main equity the Rishab brings is that koyachas can mix, and it's only a ha'ara. I'm saying this part is that seichel has in it many different type of koyachas, many different.
It's hainuhach. What does it mean the ha'ara and not the full etzem of
seichel?
seichel?
Koyach has that ability, right? Koyach hashmir, whatever, doesn't have a koyach.
So he's talking not mislabish in the hands. Yeah, I've never seen the koyach hashmir be mislabish in the hands. If the koyach hashmir would have something to do with tziyur, then maybe a ha'ara of shmir would go into the hands.
Right, so the real reason why seichel could go into the hands is because seichel has in it
a shaykhus to the hands.
Right, yeah.
But it can't be mislabish in the guf hayad because the guf hayad is not a keli to seichel. But the koyach hayad is a keli to the ha'ara seichel.
Then it could not really.
This is I'm explaining what the Arab Ashab is saying, but slightly ba'imik yesa, to understand that what does it mean ha'ara seichel? It means that chedik of seichel which is shaykhus to the koyach atnua. If it wouldn't have a shaykhus, it wouldn't be mislabish there. The ha'ara seichel which is shaykhus to rikut, for example, will not be mislabish in the yad because the yad doesn't dance, or maybe it does. But akaponim, other parts, right? It wouldn't be mislabish in the ears because it has no shaykhus to ears, right? So that is brings out the nakuda of islapshus, which is explained in Perik Beis. Now in Perik Beis Gufa he starts explaining. Now we've got the idea that islapshus means there has to be a shaykhus pnimi between the mislabish and the malbish. So now we understand what he finishes off on page Hey in the new ones. You see in the end of the paragraph, he says two words. He says, Harehu mislabish, umisgalaboy, umisachadboy. So he adds on two words, misgala, misachad, which here is giving out the klolim of what islapshus is. For some reason he says misgala first, but in the Seder Habil, he's being masbir, the misachid first. What does it mean, misachid? Misachid means that it comes down, if two things are coming together, again, when they're merging, and then the ofen pnimi, so then each one has to give in a little bit. The one who's merging with the higher koyach, which is mislabish, and the lower koyach, there's going to be some type of yerida into the next koyach. Again, it's not like mashke in a cup. There's no kesher. You're not being moired the mashke into the level of plastic or glass. But in the koyachas pnimiyim, you're being moired it to the guf. Therefore, it's going to become a megushim dika koyach lefi erech what it was before. So that's hakshama. That's the first inyan of his misachid. And the second inyan is his galus. That's on the next page. The Evorim are bottled to the koyachas. Why are they bottled? Because they're galus. That's the other side of the equation. Again, the two have to give in. The koyach elyon has to be mislabish, and the mokin that's mislabish has to be bottled to the elyon that's being mislabish inside him. There's a merging from both sides. That's the omnom on page Vov. What is a bit difficult to understand is when he gives the example of how koyachas are mislabish and a poil, he says it's not b'derech hechrich, but the line that begins with a hay on the side, the original daf hay, it says he says rotzen is poil b'derech hechrich. Ma'she'en ken koyachas pnimim are not b'derech hechrich, are b'derech hislabshus v'hisgalas, as we said earlier. And what's the mashal that he gives? A few lines down, he says, "K'moy masha moyach shalit al alev, hare'ein ze shlila b'derech hechrich ki'im shepoel chalishus b'hateva shebreva mezakchoy u'k'vashkos v'seif shobenu atam mipnei shahalev mekabel chayis." That's how he suffered, by the way. In the Tanya it doesn't say chayis. Shahalev mekabel chayis ma'amoyach. There it says Lochein, here it says Al Kain HaMoyach Shalit. He's Mekabel Chayes, that's why he's Shalit. Well, it seems to say in Tanya in Perik Yud Beis, Tanya in Perik Yud Beis, what's the Lashon over there? When he says Moyach Shalit? Can't hear. Yeah, but what in what Eifen is it Shalit on the Leiv? What's the Lashon of Tanya there? He says, Yochel kol adam nis apik v'limshel beruach ta'avosei. Limshel sounds like it's b'derech echor. What's going on? And Moyach Shal Talevi just explained that the Moyach is not like the Rotzen. The Rotzen is like a melech. He comes down and he tells people what to do. So the Rotzen comes down to the other keiches and says, I want you to start doing this. I want to run now. So whether you're tired or not, you start running because you want to. So the Rotzen is a metzava. That's hechrich. Is tired, he forces himself. That's Rotzen. He says, Moyach Shalat Alev is different. It's not b'derech hechrich, it's b'derech hislapshus. He's explaining to the leiv, he's explaining to the keiches, this is how it should be. It's like the difference between a melech and a rav. A rav doesn't give out orders. He explains it, this is how it's supposed to be. And he proves it. And then you understand, you agree with it. Or you don't agree with it, right? But al kapana should be b'hislapshus. It should be understood, it should be accepted by the makabel. So the question is here, he says that the Moyach Shal Talev, but he's saying it's not like Rotzen. But in Tanya it says it is like Rotzen. He says, Rotzen, you have a Tanya here? It's difficult to find a Tanya 770, yeah? There must be a Tanya over there. There's usually one over there. I just forgot the one.
Huh? I got
Oh, you got one? Okay, thanks. Let's get the Lashon B'diuk. It's good to remember this because Tzarech Yinktzas. In the end of Perik Yud Beis, in the middle of Perik Yud Beis, he says, this is when he introduces it. He says, Ki ha-moyach shal talev, kama shkosa b'ray mehem lepashas Pinchas, b'toldosoi, v'tevi yitzirasa, shekach neitz adam b'toldosoi, shekol adam yachal b'ritzoinoi shebemoychoi. Lehisapek v'limshol beruach ta'avasa shebeliboi, shloi lemalis mishalas liboi b'maisid b'machshav. Is that you're being masbir to the heart, or you are limshol?
What's the difference between Nefesh Baham and Nefesh Lekis?
Huh?
Nefesh Baham is you have to be shamed. The Moyach, the Midas of the Nefesh Lekis is Moyach as well.
He's talking about being pearl on the Nefesh Lekis?
No, Nefesh Baham is.
Nefesh Baham is.
That's why it's an Nefesh Baham. Over here, he's talking about Nefesh Lekis.
No. He's talking about Nefesh. He says being Moyach, he's in Moyach Shalom Talev, the same thing. And he's talking about Perik Nun Aleph.
It's like in a
Va'afilo halev. What's the leiv? The leiv is Nefesh Lekis. Va'afilo halev mekabel me'hamoyach lachein hamoyach shaltad of b'toldasei. Canal, Bavoranish. It's not a different Zoya. I wouldn't expect it. The same Zoya in Pashas Pinchas. So that's a shtickle problem. What we're going to do about that? Huh?
Mishoel can't be after. So the Koda being Michoel can't be after being worked on, after breaking it.
That's not called being Michoel.
Maybe it's like in a spiritual Rotzen. When the Kesach Seichel is paid of Kesach, it's not just Masbir. If I just Masbir, I would not dance. I need to have also Rotzen. But the way the Rotzen work is that I'm explaining how to do it, and then
that's not good. Then you wouldn't say Michoel if you explain. If I tell you have to stop doing something, stop smoking, that's Michoel. I'm telling you what to do. If I explain to you, smoking is not a good idea because, and I show you pictures of people's lungs after they're smoking, I don't want you don't want to. It's at yourself. That's not called being Michoel on you.
When I'm dancing, it's not like I'm explaining to the leg how to dance and I'm going.
No, you are explaining.
I'm also explaining, but I need to want to dance. If I want.
Avada, everything starts from Rotzen. There's no shy that everything starts from Rotzen. You can't do anything without a Rotzen. But the way the Rotzen is being pearl on the leiv, is it b'derech memshol or b'derech pnimius, bislapshus?
So
Both.
Huh?
Both.
Both? You're saying like him? No. What are you saying?
He brings later the Moshe Nefesh Elokis survivors themselves. And there it's the version of not Chechreach, rather in a way of as there is Maski Meichet. That's not the Tchilas Aveda. There's
now you said the word. You said Tchilas Aveda. Yes. If you start Perik Yud Beis, when we're talking about a Benini, and he's just starting out and he has a Nefesh Bahamis, a Behema, which is let loose, what do? You need to have the Shlita of the Moyach over the Leiv, Shlita with a Hey, that's Sholet B'koyach over the Leiv, B'rotzen. That's the beginning. At some point, since the Leiv is Makabel from the Moyach, so the Moyach can slowly expect a change. It starts off, because it's an emergency now, he's about to do something he's not supposed to do. So you tell him, you're in charge, you have Bechira, stop what you're doing. But as time goes by, there could be a hasbara that the Moyach gives to the Leiv, and the Leiv will accept it. What he's saying in Perik Nun Aleph, that's why he's only being Mitzayan to Perik Nun Aleph. That doesn't say in Perik Yud Beis. That only says in Perik Nun Aleph. When he's talking about how things work, in the end, since the Leiv is Makabel Chayis from the Moyach, therefore it could be both from Pnimi. But just to be boiled it even more, where you see it clearly in Tanya, that there are levels, as a Hechocha, you'll see that in Perik Lamed Hey, where he starts talking about, not negate the whole Arichas over here, but when he talks about in Perik Lamed Hey, how the Nefesh Bahamis affects the Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Elokis affects the Nefesh Bahamis. So he says, how does the Neshama, how is the Nefesh Elokis poil on the Guf? The Mamutzi is the Nefesh Achiyunus Bahamis, Abelubish B'dam Ha'odom, Shebeliboy. So he says, Va'af shemuhusa v'atzmusu shel nefesh bahamis shebeliboy. Shehei midei haroim. Adayin loy nichlelu b'kedusha. The midis of the nefesh bahamis are still a behema, basically. Nothing's changed. Mikol mokim, listen to the Rishonos of the Alter Rebbe. Mikol mokim, me'achad di iskafyon l'kedusha, u'bal korcham oinin omein, u'maskimim, u'misratzin. La'asiyas hamitzah, al yedei hiskabes nefesh elokis shebemoyach sheshalet al halev. See the lashon? Al yedei me'achash de iskafyon u'ba'koch oinu omein u'maskimim u'misratzim. Why? Because the nefesh elokis is miskabes shebemoyach sheshalet al halev. Shebemoyach sheshalet al halev is going on all four lashonos he used before. At the beginning is iskafyon, which he was talking about in Perik Yud Beis. Then he comes to a Seder that he's already iskafya, but he's already a step closer. Ba'al korchach oinim omein, he agrees a little bit. Ba'al korchach, but he agrees a little bit. Then umaskimin, he's already maskim. And then umisratzin, he himself has a rotzen to do the mitzvah. So you've already been poiled by from Pnimi, and it's all coming from this nakuda, iskabes nafesh elokis, shebemoyach sheshalet al halev. So it comes out that in moyach sheshalet al halev there are different levels. The beginning is taka berotzen, that would be bederech al derech rotzen. It's prepared bederech hechrich, and as you go on, it goes more and more bepnimius. The shaila is, how could it be bepnimius? The answer is because the leiv is mekabel from the moyach. That means there's a slabshus of moichin in the midas shebelev. So eventually you can be purba from pnimi. So it's a bit like when you train a child. When he's young, you have to tell him you're not allowed to do this, and you don't give explanations. We don't do this. And if you do it, you're going to get a patch. Well, that's how they used to say, Al Capone. And then it goes further. You tell him this is not the right thing. You explain to him, and he begins to understand. He's muscular middle. Some stage he understands, this is dangerous. I shouldn't be doing this. And he'll stop himself. That's already a stage when he's been poiled by from Pnimi on the Nefesh Bahamis. So that's, again, the Nakuda, again, is going to be, the Nakuda of all this is slapshus. Slapshus means that there's a shaychus pnimius, and it's mislabish bipnimius, There's a connection between the Malbish and the Mislabish, and that's how it works. This Maamar is very important because it's all a hachana to the whole Hemshech. We'll get to that in a second. In Shehikdimu, the Rebbe Shmuel takes it further, and he says the Ikka. Why is that the Ikka? Shehikdimu, he starts off, Omnum Ikka ha'inyan bazer, the Ikka inyan of Islapshus of the Koiches in the Guf. Why does it work like that? The Fisha Koiches heim pnimiyim be'etzem. They're pnimiyim be'etzem. Why do you have to say they're pnimiyim be'etzem to have Islapshus? Wouldn't there be a Islapshus without pnimiyim be'etzem? Why is that the Ikka? The Ikka is, since they're pnimiyim be'etzem, therefore the Mislabish in the Mislabish and the Koiches HaGuf. Huh? Oh, what does it mean pnimiyim? What does it mean pnimiyim be'etzem? Mugbalim be'etzem. That's how it answers it. And what's a mugbal? Why do I need to say that? Why is it so ikka, that nakuda? Again, this is klali islapshus. Klali islapshus means that there's a kesher pnimi. If the nefesh would be be'etzem bligvul, and it's coming into the gul, even if you manage to fit it in somehow, that would be like the mashki in the cup. You manage to take a whole bottle and pour a chelik of it into the cup. That's only a chelik of it that can go into the cup. You can't get more. Okay, so it's mugbal now. But there's no kesher pnimi. We're saying that it's pnimi be'etzem means to tell us about ba'omek yaisa, that the kesher pnimi between the koyach and the guf, the eva where this koyach is being mislabish, is even before he started being mislabish. He already had a shaychus with it because he's mugbal be'etzem. When he came out of the nefesh, he's already, so to speak, made to measure that he's going to end up in this kli because that's his inyan. He's shaychus already to that, and he's mugbal be'etzem. It's not that somehow something happened and all of a sudden it came down and it managed to squeeze into the guf and everyone finds his spot. No. He is mugbal be'etzem. He's koyach ha're'ir be'etzem. Therefore, automatically he's going to go to the keli, which is shaychus to this koyach. That means that it comes out that ba'omi case, even before he was mislabish, he was already shaychus to islabshis. He was already shaychus to this kli. Why is this so negea over here? I'm going a bit further. I'm not going to go to the next Maamar, but it's good to know the yisod of what's going to be happening throughout the Hemshech. Why is this so negeh, this akdama, barichas of koiches hanefesh? Because this is a yisod for this Hemshech. The Rebbe Nishma was saying before, he was makasha bislabshus of alakus in the world through Teres Achsidus, is he's doing it miteich this inyan. Let me explain what I mean. You have, for example, there's a Maamar that the Rebbe said in Tavshin Chav Daled where he says that the Rebbe Nishma said a Maamar once, Tak in Ayin Daled, part of the Hemshech, he said a Maamar all about Oyer on Tisha B'Av Nidcha. You know which Maamar we're talking about? Keit Sam Lacheshech, Tavshin Chav Daled. He spoke about Oyer on Tisha B'Av Nidcha. Why did he talk about Oyer on Tisha B'Av Nidcha? So the Rebbe says there was a shaychus to the inyan of this man when it was said. He wanted to talk about Oyer because Oyer is Deicha Cheshech, so he wanted to be Deicha the Cheshech of Galus, so he said a Maamar on the inyan of Oyer. Then the Rebbe said, why do you say a Maamar in your oil? You can talk about oil in halacha. No, he wanted the pnimius of Torah, which is called the oil of Torah. Then the Rebbe goes first, it's not just the oil of Torah, which is pnimius of Torah. He wanted the chelik of pnimius of Torah, which talks about oil. So the whole Maamar, the teichen of the whole Maamar was oil. Similarly over here, the Rebbe, based on what we said before, that since the whole teichen of Ayin Beis is to bring his slabshus of a lechus in the world, so that's the whole teichen tak of the whole Hemshech. His slabshus, which means also that the inyanim are pnimiyim be'etzem. So the rest of the Hemshech is going to be based on this nekuda, that the oiris hamislabshim bekelim in Atzilus are not just that when they come to Atzilus they're mislabish. They were pnimiyim be'etzem from stage one. They were pnimiyim be'etzem even lifnei hatzimtzum. That's a big chiddush. That the shitta that the Rebbe Rashab is dealing with is that the koiches were pnimiyim be'etzem even lifnei hatzimtzum. Yeah, and the Rebbe Nishma says it a few times. He says kafi hashitta hamavur bedrush zeh. We're going according to this shitta. There are two shittas, as we know. If the oiris have pshitas or the oiris have etziyah, but the shitta hamavur bedrush zeh is that the oiris themselves have etziyah even before they come into kelim, and that's why they come into kelim. So it comes out the Seder Shtalshus is based on two inyonim. There's an oil which is going to end up being makif because it has no shaykhs to islabshus. And then there's an oil which is already prearranged, lifnei atzimtzum, to be an oil hamislabish. Just moving when it's lifnei atzimtzum, it's not shaykhs to islabshus because it's too high. But be'etzim, it's pnimi be'etzim. It's already shaykhs to this Indian that when you'll have a tzimtzum and you'll be mamshach the kav and you'll come down to atzilus, they will be mislabish in the kelim. So that is the nekuda that's running through this whole hemshech, even into chelik Beis. Although in chelik Beis and also here somewhere in one of the early Maamar, there's a brackets where he is metavach the two shittas. One is pnimius and one is chitzonius, but that's already a tivuch that's be'ik in chelik Beis. The original chelik Beis I'm referring to of the Hemshech. So that is the main chiddush of this Hemshech, the pnimi be'etzim. There's only one thing you have to remember, which might occur to you, this question, that bozeh ein hamoshel daimen animshel. In this nekuda, that the koiches are pnimim be'etzim from the nefesh is not doimer to the way the oiris are pnimim be'etzim l'mayla. What's the difference? If you ask how comes there's oiris pnimim l'mayla, you're going to have to say that the Eibishter is not shaykhs to pnimius or tzio or anything like that. So how did you get oiris pnimim? How did you get eses fidus agnuzes? The answer is, in Oirin Sof, he wanted it. And he was Meshai, Shia Ba'atzma B'Koyach, he decided to make an oil which is an oil pnimi. So, the way we got from Pshitas of Oirin Sof to Oiris Pnimiyim was because the Eibishter wanted and he made it tzimtzum. But if you ask the same thing in the Moshel, you won't have that. If I ask you, how comes you have Eser Koiches Pnimiyim, it's not because the Etzem HaNefesh decided he wanted Eser Koiches and then was mitzamtzim himself and made Eser Koiches. But that ain't a Moshel Dev Nefesh. The reason why you have Eser Koiches is because that's how you're built. The Eibishter built the Nefesh like that, Melachat Chila, that there's an Etzem and there's Eser Koiches. The only thing we have to understand, it's not how you got to Eser Koiches, is how, what's the relationship between the Eser Koiches and the Etzem HaNefesh. And that's what he discusses in this Perik of Perik Gimel, I believe. Yeah, in Perik Gimel he discusses what's the yachas between the Etzem HaNefesh and the Koiches Pnimiyim. Because sof kol sof, something has to make sense. Again, everything has to be said about drug, has to make sense. You have an Etzem Poshut and you have Koiches Mugbalim, Be'etzem. So what's the connection? So he says when the Koiches are kolol in the Etzem, the first one, there's two levels. There's Nefesh Noise Koiches and Koiches HaKlulim Be'etzem. Are we familiar with the difference? Koiches HaKlulim Be'etzem. He uses the expression, for example, the last line on page Zayin, Ki Yedua de Koich HaSeichel HaYuli HaAtzmi HaKol Be'etzem HaNefesh. It's a bit of a mouthful. Koich HaSeichel HaYuli HaAtzmi. What is that? So, to make it simple, we'll say like this. There's three levels of koiches, or four. We'll see. We'll start off like this. You have a koich golui, let's say koich haseichel. It's a koich haseichel that you use to understand it. That's koich haseichel golui. Then you have a koich haseichel, which is it's called a hamshocha ne'elemes. It's a koich that's nimshach, but it's only in a form that is ready. It's ready to have koiches. It's ready to have koiches nisgala. But at the moment it's nana. For example, what would that be in nefesh? That would be the koyach hamaskul. Right? If you work hard to try to understand, your koyach hamaskul is going to give you to understand chidushim ideas, whatever it is. So that koyach hamaskul is not the koyach hagolu. Let me give you a better example, make it more muchashtik. A moshel would be like this. We have three people, we'll go a moshel from koyach hachesed instead of koyach haseichel. We'll work back afterwards. You have three people sitting here. Avram Avinu, a regular Yid, and Amalek, B'havdil. What's the difference in the Koyach HaChesed? Avram Avinu, the Koyach HaChesed, is Bizgalas. He's mamish waiting by the doorstep. When's there going to be Orchim? That's Koyach HaChesed is Begilul. That's Koyach HaChesed HaGolub. A regular Yid is not standing by the steps waiting for his guests. If you go over to him and you ask him nicely, can you give me a halvo, can you do me this, can you do that, he'll be in his oila with chesed. But where's the chesed now? It's b'koyach. That's called Amshocha Nelemis. The Koyach Chesed is Nimshach and is ready to be Nisgala, but it's still in its form of, it's still Nelam. Now let's take Amalek. Where's his Chesed? None at all. Does that mean he doesn't have Koyach Chesed? If he would have a son, so he could have a child at some point, that he would be a Baal Chesed. It's possible. So by him, nothing was Nimshach. But by the next generation, or a few generations down, it could be Nimshach. That means his Nefesh has it, but it's so Nelam, the Koyach is Kolol in the Etzem. So, Benagir Lamaisa, it's not available. That's called Koyach Hiyuli Atzmi. The Koyach HaGolui is stage 1. Koyach Hiyuli is stage 2. And Koyach Hiyuli Atzmi is when it's kolol in the Atzmi, means it's kolol in the Etzem. Now you do have higher than that, he mentions. What could be higher than that? We have 3 dagas and koyachas. What could be higher than that? There's the Etzem HaNefesh itself. Till now we're talking about the koyach. We're talking about 3 stages of the koyach. Here it's golui, here it's hiyuli, here it's hiyuli atzmi. But what about the Etzem itself? The Etzem HaNefesh. The Etzem HaNefesh is not made up of koyachas. The Etzem is an Etzem Echad Poshet. But since it's an Etzem of a human being, so we know that this Etzem is shaychas to have these and these koyachas, these Eser koyachas. So we say the Lashon, the Etzem is noise koyachas. Noise means it's not there at all. Just like, for example, a blank piece of paper is noisa any picture you want, any letter you want. You can write whatever you want because it's a blank piece of paper. If it already has a picture on it, you can't make another picture. If it already is written up, you can't print on that and more stuff because there's already a tziyah to it. But if it would be a blank piece of paper, you can write whatever you want. So how many tziyurim are in that paper? On that paper, it's noisa hakel, whatever tziyah you want, whatever letter you want, you can write. So, but what is there now? It's called noisa hakel. The Etzem HaNefesh is noisa all the koyachas. What koyach is there now? Nothing there now. It's just an Etzem Echad Poshet. But from this can come out koyachas. So there's 3 levels of koyachas, and then there's the Etzem noisa koyachas. When we're talking about Pnimi Be'etzem, we're only talking about koyachas. We're not talking about the Etzem. Because the Etzem does not have any Pnimi Be'etzem. It's an Etzem Echad Poshet. But once you start going the next stage, which is called koyachas haklulim b'nefesh, there you can already ask, well, how many koyachas, what are they? There's Eser koyachas, and they are still kolol in the Etzem, but eventually they will come out, and then there'll be the next level, which will be the koyachas hagiluim.
Nefesh is koyachas like koyachas?
Yes, noise is yecholos.